Good morning, students. Today's lecture is meant for BA first year students of English literature. The first paper is of poetry and drama, and I've been taking for the last 1 month or so the poetry section. Today, I'm going to talk about one of the major Elizabethan poets, John Donne. You have got one poem prescribed, a couple of poems rather, two to be exact. There are two poems which are prescribed in your course by John Donne. The first poem is Go and Catch a Falling Star. But before I take up the poem or the actual text of the poem, I may tell you a few things about John Donne. Donne was an Elizabethan poet and a contemporary of Shakespeare, Marlowe, Edmund Spenser, Ben Jonson. So, as a poet, he was very scholarly in the sense that he was known as Dr. Donne, meaning thereby that he was highly educated at the time in the 16th century. He was regarded as one of the intellectuals and university wits during that period. He was well versed in scholasticism. The word scholasticism pertains to Middle Ages and to the world of the clergy and the world of the church. From there we have got the word scholar. A scholar is one who is well educated, well refined, and who is highly intellectual. So Donne was well versed in scholasticism, and as a person bred and brought up in scholasticism, he had a special knack for debating things. He had mastered the art of arguing, and this is something which we find even in his poetry. He is regarded as a metaphysical poet. Now, the word metaphysical means beyond physical. Meta means beyond, and physical means this world. But metaphysics is philosophy, and metaphysical also used for philosophy or philosophical leanings. But when we say that Donne is a metaphysical poet, it does not mean that Donne was a philosopher or was a philosophical poet. Basically, it is said that Donne affects metaphysics even in his love poems. Now, Donne is a metaphysical poet. In his style of presentation, in the way he writes his poems, not in the content. Of course, as a poet, Donne grew throughout his life. Earlier, he wrote love poems, exactly in the tradition of Elizabethan poetry. He wrote sonnets, he wrote poems for his wife, for his beloved. But later on, in due course of time, he turned out to be a religious poet, and he composed sonnets in praise of God, in praise of religion, and on religious themes. But even in his love poetry, he affects metaphysics, meaning thereby that the way he deals with that particular topic of love in a poem, that very style reminds one of metaphysical style, which is full of arguments, full of conceits, full of startling images. He has got a knack to startle his readers, and a pinch of humor is also there in such poems. He is regarded as a revolutionary poet because in certain poems he talks or gives certain images which were not traditional, which were not in the line and tradition of Elizabethan poetry, altogether different, and it is in this way that he is known as an intellectual poet because he was far, far ahead of his times, and he has got some element of modernism in his poetry also. So he has written this particular poem, Go and Catch a Falling Star, in which the basic idea is that it is very easy to do and view and experience impossible things in the world, but it is very difficult, or it is more impossible than these things to find a woman in the world who is both fair and faithful. Now, when he said this thing, or when he discussed this type of idea in his poem, Go and Catch a Falling Star, basically he was going astray or beyond the tradition which was prevalent during the Elizabethan times. Now, talking about not finding a woman who is both beautiful and